My family told me Islam's like a ocean. As you go in, it goes deeper and deeper. I'm not saying this in a rude way, but where I was at the end of my journey, I felt like that ocean of Islam was more like a pond, and Sikhi was the ocean. Sikhi was just vast, it was greater. Muslims, they would ask a really silly one.
ਅਸੀਂ ਲੋਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸੁਣਨੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਫੈਲ ਰਹੀ ਏ, ਚੀਨ ਦੇ ਲੋਕ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਵੱਲ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਆਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਫਰੋਮ ਇਸਲਾਮ ਟੂ ਸਿੱਖੀ, ਇਸਲਾਮ ਨੂੰ ਮੰਨਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਬਣ ਗਿਆ। ਅੱਜ ਇਸੇ ਹਵਾਲੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਹੈ, ਵੀਡੀਓ 'ਚ ਜਾਣਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਕਿਉਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਬਣਿਆ, ਇਹਨੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਇਸੇ ਹਵਾਲੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਹੈ। ਵੀਡੀਓ ਦੀ ਤਰਫ ਵਧਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਿਸ਼ ਹੈ, ਅਗਰ ਚੈਨਲ ਤੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਚੈਨਲ ਨੂੰ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ, ਨਾਲ ਬਣੇ ਬੈਲ ਆਈਕਨ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਦਬਾਓ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਹਰ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਰਹੇ। ਚਲਿਏ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। 1 2 3 go.
He comes up to me and I said, I'm not here to convert everyone, I'm just giving out water. And I told him about Shabi and he said, I'm here to convert you. And I said, you could try. You could tell they know nothing about Sikhi. They've just been programmed to think a certain way, only their way is the way and everyone else is wrong. He's like to me, Satan is telling you to do this. I'm like, Satan is telling me to get up early in the morning and pray. Satan is telling me to do charity. Satan is telling me to treat everyone as one. My family told me Islam's like a ocean. As you go in, it goes deeper and deeper. I'm not saying this in a rude way, but where I was at the end of my journey, I felt like that ocean of Islam was more like a pond, and Sikhi was the ocean. Sikhi was just vast, it was greater. Muslims, they would ask a really silly one, is Allah in the toilet or something like that? Is Allah in that thing? Is Allah in you? Is Allah in you? Okay, but break all those things down. If you break them all down to a molecular level, everything is atoms. So now let's change the question. Is Allah in every atom? The highest you can achieve is being in the court of Allah. But the way they describe it, non-alcoholic wine, foods have X amount of purvia, which is the entities for pleasure. To me, it just sounds like all you have to do is be someone who's an Andrew Tate, someone really wealthy, someone with multiple partners. You can have X amount of foods. To me, it was just like, you can experience that on this world. It's not really a liberation. It comes across as someone man-made has made this. And if you ask me, what is the best thing you could ever want in life? For someone to say, I want to merge with Vahiguru, to me that's like the best feeling, you know. But to them, they don't agree with that concept. I love Sikhi so much that if my family really didn't want to speak to me, so be it. So if that's the price to pay for Sikhi and you're someone who really wants this path, kids being asked to convert to Islam, if you're someone that knows you're Sikhi, flip the question and say, why shouldn't I be a Sikh? Because a lot of the times they don't know anything about Sikhi. If they ask you, be a Muslim, you say to them, why shouldn't I be a Sikh though? What can your faith offer me that my faith does not offer me? My faith already offers that I don't need to be Islam. Does your faith talk about Sachkhand, achieving Jeev and Mukt in this world? Nope. Okay, I'm happy being a Sikh. This path is wicked. Look at me now.
So yeah, when you first came into Sikhi, we was at Singh's camp, and people found out, you know, you obviously shared with the Sangat that, you know, you'd converted from Islam to Sikhi, and you know, was there this pressure at that time, you know, where people are like, oh, we got to tell the whole world kind of thing?
So at the time of Singh's camp was, I think it was literally the next month after I received Amrit. So I was totally just fresh on this new journey. Didn't know what to expect, meeting all types of people. Singh's camp itself was a blissful experience. But one thing that I felt was maybe some people might be on this journey as well, like at the start of what I went through. So I spoke about my story at camp of being from another faith, a Islamic background. And at first people found it inspiring, they loved it. And I had many talks after that. People said that they only like something about that made other people tell their own stories as well, which I just loved. But from that point onwards, I never had any pressure to that, oh, he's a convert, let's bring him on the camera, he has to tell his story, we got to tell the whole world. It was respected. That's one thing I loved, that this person's on his journey. He's speaking to people in his own way, in his own time. He's opening up to people if he wants to. And so that's one thing I really, really liked about that. No one was pressuring me to do this. This is perhaps the first interview I've done in 3-4 years I've been on the Sikhi path.
Yeah, because we were speaking about this offline that unfortunately a lot of the times when another faith, we've seen a lot of videos recently, where if there was an ex-Sikh who'd become a Muslim, for example, they would just kind of gloat about it online and say, look what's happened here, look what we've been able to do and stuff. And obviously a lot of the the conversion cases that I've been facing now. But it was nice to hear that, you didn't feel that pressure. And for us, it wasn't a thing about gloating. It was just like, it was amazing. It was good. But the main thing for us is that you just get to go on your journey and you get to experience Sikhi. And that was the main thing. And so today on the podcast, we have Joga Singh. Very blessed to have Joga Singh on. We've known you for quite a while now. It's been about 3-4 years. The first Singh's Camp.
3 to 4 years, yeah.
Yeah. And
2021.
2021. And you mentioned Singh's Camp a lot at the start, so shout out to Singh's Camp as well.
Yeah.
And you was in my group, innit? The first 2 years, innit?
Yeah.
So shout out to my group as well. At Singh's Camp, the best group at Singh's Camp representing, right? And if you guys don't know about Singh's Camp, we'll put the links in the description. Check it out. It's definitely a life changer for the Singhs, and of course, it's a cause camp as well for the big bear that can go to. But yeah, just tell us a bit about yourself, because like you said at the start of the podcast, you weren't always from a Sikh faith, a Sikh background. You're from an Islamic background.
Yeah.
So just tell us about that. And how did the journey come from you going from Islam to Sikhi?
So growing up, to those who don't know, I came from a Pakistani family, modern family. They came from Pakistan. My grandparents, I think my granddad was from India. So growing up, typical Pakistani Punjabi family. I was, for those that don't know, I do have a stutter, so that's something that's, at the time, it really made me quiet. So I was this quiet, humble kid, and one thing that meant a lot to me growing up was generally my faith. It was just my personal qualities. I wasn't really caught up in peer pressure or anything like that. But yeah, growing up in Pakistani household, learning about Islam. So my family was a moderately practicing family in general. I will admit, not highly strict. They are modern in general, what you see in Western society nowadays.
In most communities and religions.
But Islam was still practiced. It was still talked about, still enforced on the kids of the family and the grown-ups. So growing up, I would hear stories of the Prophet as well, especially Moses, who had a stutter. So I knew stories of the Prophet Muhammad. We would watch movies that they made about the prophets that I loved. I would do my 5 times namaz when I could, trying to be on that path. I loved when it was Ramzan, especially the food, doing the food shopping for Sehri times and Iftar. So that was my just life growing up, generally, when I was a kid. Then you get to teenage years, and as life progresses, you just get hit by different things. Generally growing up, I would always, because you're only ever taught, I would say this, when you're in a Pakistani, even Bangladeshi household as well, because my wife's from Bangladesh, so there are similarities as well. Other faiths aren't really talked about. You don't really get encouraged to learn about other cultures, other religions, people from all different walks of life. It's mainly Islam. Nothing wrong with that. It's if that's just how it is, but that's all you kind of know. So in school as well, like, I had friends, and I didn't notice this at the time because I'm part of that particular group. There were times where they would sort of pick on Sikhs as well. This was especially Sikhs or anyone who wasn't really a Muslim. Not all the time, but it's something that looking back now, it would happen occasionally. People, there would be Muslim students who tend to be typically from a Pakistani household. I can only talk from a Pakistani experience of those communities, but they would be doing comments, taking the mick out of, the Sikhs' headwear or someone else, how they looked. So there's been a few experiences of that in school life, And throughout that, I didn't really understand why it was that. It was just one of those things where it's just normal. So later on, then, as I got older, got into working life, again, I got married as well. I got married young to keep things in marriage. Me and my wife, we met each other and we wanted to make it halal, as they say. So that was one blessing I had in my life. We wanted to do things right. So then we got married. But then there was really strange. So up to that point, when I was a full adult, there were times I even saw in my personal family, and I don't mind sharing this, whereas not to associate with non-Muslims. And it's not as if they tell you that. It happens in a very indirect way. And when I look at other communities, how they act now as well, you can see it's not like with the current issue of school kids, for example, non-Muslims getting picked on by Muslim students of a particular community. You can sort of pick up on that. Those kids aren't. It happens in a very indirect way. It's not as if your family tells you, right, you have to pick on that person because of so. It's hard to explain, but it's either. I mean, I have seen videos of like in the masjid of certain talks that do sound a bit on the strict side of how they view non-Muslims. Even in my own personal experience, it was like what I saw from actions in my family and other Muslims in the community. They see the world as Muslims and the other half as Kafirs. And that didn't sit right with me in general. Because
what does it mean by Kafirs?
Kafirs, in their definition, would mean a disbeliever, but someone who's heard the message but has rejected it, and their message being the message of the Prophet.
What is that? If you don't mind me asking, what was that specific message of the Prophet, that you have to follow Islam or
follow the 5 principles of the faith?
Okay.
So doing the Shahada, acknowledging the Prophet Muhammad is the final prophet, donating to charity, doing 5 times namaz, fasting for Ramzan, and I believe the last one is it's an optional one, but being able to do Hajj in your lifetime if you're able to do so. Very expensive, by the way. I think it's like 10,000 per ticket. But when Islam's talked about, it's talked about in a very peaceful way in general. So growing up, it was like I would always defend it. Like there would be people that would say, they would ask me questions, or they would ask me about the common question you get with Prophet Muhammad and Aisha. Aisha was 6 years old. I would be the one defending that because I loved my faith. And those questions, when I got old enough, I had to sort of research myself a bit. I need to defend this. And so I got to a point where I was seeing my family. There would be instances like, for example, I wasn't allowed to bring a Sikh to my nikah.
What's a nikah? Sorry.
It's the Islamic marriage. So when me and my wife got married, my mom was like, had the thinking, oh, what would the imam say if there's a Sikh there? What would my family house, can't invite someone over for a cup of tea because my auntie would think, oh, we shouldn't associate with non-Muslims. So there's a lot of that ideology which it personally didn't sit right with me.
Do you think that was cultural as well as, was it religious, or was it more cultural?
See, you can say cultural because I've seen it a lot in Pakistani and Bangladeshi communities. But the thing is, though, where are they getting it from? This is still a modern country that they're in.
And you said they were quite modern as well, to be fair.
It's a strange one because my auntie once told my mum not to associate with non-Muslims because will be going to hell. And I've heard that narrative a few times, even in school, where we can't associate with this person because they're a kafir. The way a secondary reason, meaning of that word is second-class citizen. So again, it's just looking down upon anyone who's not a Muslim, whereas there's no principle. Okay, but that's still a human being. You know, regardless of what they're believing in, he's still got 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 nose like us. So there was many instances of that So I got to a point, okay, so when I was married, and as always, like you're married as well, generally life hits you. There's so many problems in life, work, generally family, friends, general stress life chucks at you. I was at a point where I guess my energy was down, just like a low point, how we all go through in life. And I was trying to keep strong in my faith. I would pray at work. There'd be just different aspects. Me and my wife, our marriage was crumbling then. I'll tell you how Sikhi saved our marriage. I love my wife so much, of what she's of just how much she's just been there and taken for me. But we were at a crumbling aspect of our relationship at the time, and we were literally about to split. And we came back, and I felt so bad because her mum, which I love so much, like my own mother, we mended things and we just got back. And this was just when COVID's kicked off. And I think COVID was a really strange time because for a lot of people, it just made them more spiritually aware and more active with religion in general. So for me, okay, so this is where it got strange, because at this point growing up, in school times, they don't really teach Sikhi a lot. It's chosen by the local council how it's being taught in schools, and it tends to be year 7 to 9. So by the time the students leave, no one knows who a Sikh is. My personal experience is I didn't really know hardly anything about Sikhi. I knew Guru Nanak Dev Ji was the founder. I knew Sikhs were lovely people. If you're hungry, they'll give out free food. That's one thing I love about it. I knew about the Sikh Raj at the time, the Sikh kingdom. But besides that, I didn't know much. So just before COVID hit, I started getting like these random thoughts in my head. And it was so strange because it became a pattern. So I didn't notice it at first. You notice it after a while, like 3 weeks in. And I kept telling myself, like, I want to be a Sikh. And it was so bizarre, like that feeling, because I barely know anything about it. So it just got stronger over that month. This was like February of 2020. And then at night time, something was telling me, I don't know whether it was some external voice or is it my own conscious, something's telling me I want to be a Sikh. Because at the time I would be praying to Allah, I was doing the namaz there. What I was aiming for, just to be at peace of mind. I think that's something we all want, just to be at peace of mind, generally in this life, to progress to the next, whatever, concept that we believe in, heaven, Sachkhand, whichever. And so I told someone who's also a Sikh, generally at the time, like, I'm having thoughts that I want to be a Sikh. And they didn't take much of it because they didn't think it was serious. But I knew myself that at night times I would hardly, I couldn't sleep. Something was telling me, oh, I want to be a Sikh. And I couldn't sleep. So throughout the year, the next few months, I kept it a secret to myself. And I just started binge watching and reading about Sikhi. That's when I came across the basics of Sikhi, Jagraj Singh. I fell in love with it so much. I kept just all day, all night throughout 2020 because I was out of work as well. I told myself, if I'm really taking this seriously, this is how that feeling got so strong, because I was someone who used to cut my hair, had a trimmed moustache. I used to eat meat all the time. I told myself, if I'm serious, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grow my hair. So I kept it. And throughout the year, and my in-laws noticed, my mum-in-law kept telling me, you should cut your hair, or how come you're not eating meat? Because they would like cook fish and chicken all the time. But I would tell them I'm a vegetarian now, and they would be like, what, you're a vegetarian? So, and I couldn't tell them the real reason why. I just wanted to try this experience. So throughout the year, I did these Sikh practices. I was reading up books about Sikhi. But at the same time, I want to make it clear, I was researching about Islam as well, because I think it's very important. If you're someone that's thinking about making it's a life it's a big lifestyle choice, changing faiths. You know, there's a lot to it. So
Life
if you,
commitment as well.
yeah,
right?
if you're born in an existing faith, you owe it to yourself to at least learn about that faith. So if anyone ever asks you why, you don't hesitate. You know your reasons why you don't owe it to anyone for an explanation, but you know yourself why I left. So no one can say to you, "Oh, did he really know about that religion?" Or, you know. So so that year was so immense. Then my wife noticed, and then this is why I think my wife also wants to make it clear. I'll tell a bit about her journey after, but for her, I felt because we just came back together, and then I'm gonna tell her that I'm having thoughts I want to be a Sikh, and we just came back together, and like I felt so bad because I'm doing this to her, and it's gonna break her. I don't know how her reaction's gonna be. Towards the end of the year, it was like at night times I would tear up because if I choose my wife, I lose Sikhi. If I choose Sikhi, I might lose my wife. Which one do I choose? And that was quite emotional and hard and I couldn't be selfish. Something was like, as I kept researching Sikhi and just living that lifestyle, I would be practicing Simran. I fell in love with Simran so much. There's this one YouTube video I still listen to this day. It just resonated with me. Something about it was just so beautiful. It just struck my mind. Then I fell in love with Kirtan. It's a certain Simran. I could show you after.
Yeah.
But it was of a female voice doing Simran, but it's just one of my favorites. That was the first Simran I ever heard. And then I listened to Kirtan, and then there was a time where I had a bath in the morning. I woke up at 3 in the morning. I had a bath. I did Japji Sahib downstairs. I went downstairs. It was pitch black, dark, cold. I think this was around autumn, winter times. I did Japji Sahib. And the first time I did Japji Sahib, this was so like surreal because when we talk about, sorry, I can't say the Punjabi, but you know the 10th gate,
Dasam Dwar.
Dasam Dwar. I came across that concept. So when I did Japji Sahib for the first time and it was just quiet, when I got to the end, when I did that, I honestly felt this uplift of energy and something was stimulating on my scalp. It was like, I was like, whoa, did that really happen? Like, that's literally when I got to the end of Japji Sahib. And I haven't told many people that, but that was a personal experience where like, this path is wicked.
And just to jump in quickly, you spoke about earlier, and it's a very important point that you made, that if somebody is looking to change their faith,
yes,
you're born into that faith, right? So you owe it to that faith, but also to your family, right? Because it's going to cause, upset in most cases, right? That, research your faith. And that's something that we always say, that especially now, because unfortunately we'll see a lot of cases, more now than we have for quite a while, of Sikhs converting. And the general thing is that a lot of them are not even practicing Sikhs in the first place, right? Which you have to be clear about. If they're not practicing, they don't know anything about Sikhi, and they take upon another faith, in this case, if it's Islam, and they will tell you certain things about Islam, about how amazing it is, which I'm not here to dispute. There's beautiful aspects of all faiths, including Islam. But it's like they know nothing about Sikhi. They have no idea. So for yourself then, you're saying that you looked in, at the same time you're learning about Sikhi, but you were still researching in Islam. What was you actually researching in Sikhi then? What was it that you were learning, or whether it's for the basics videos? And, how are you comparing that to Islam? And what made you want to then leave Islam and come into Sikhi in that time? What was actually going on in your head, and what were you almost kind of balancing up in your head?
So I'll answer the second part first then, what you're saying. The first thing that I was researching was, because I didn't know anything about Sikhi at that point. Like I said, this feeling, something was telling me to be a Sikh. I was like, okay, I'm researching Sikhi. So it started from scratch. I learned from the times of Nanak Dev Ji, really understanding what's interesting is, because there were so many religions on the world at this point, we always talk about the main Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism as well. So what was the need for Sikhi in this world. When you got these faiths, you got all these leaders and saints in the world. So asking myself why. What, you know how in school we learn about why, what, where, when, who. So I was asking myself these very important questions. What was the need for Sikhi on this world? What has it accomplished? What more has it brung to the people? So that's the first thing that I really fell in love with. I think those are main points you should ask about any religion. So
on that point, a lot of people say Sikhi is a mix of all these religion amalgamation, and I can't remember.
I heard that too growing up. I used to be one of the people that would be encouraging that, like, just as you were saying that. I do remember saying that to others. Sikhism is just a mixture of Hinduism and Islam. No one really takes it seriously, and look at me now. But yeah, no.
But we believe it's like an evolution of this, you could say, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not. See, it's strange how they say like we're a copy. First of all, there's many practices that we are against in Islam, such as circumcision of the sons, eating meat, things in the hadith, halal meat. So it's hearing that it triggers me, because again, we don't do idol worship. We believe in the one Allah as everyone, so it's just a bit strange how when some people throw that, it's like, have you really looked into it? When they say the most common one on Nanak Dev Ji, he was a Muslim. He never had Islamic nikah. His family weren't Muslims. He had teachers that were Muslim. He was taught by Muslim teachers. He also had Hindu teachers as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, it's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so some points like that, what it is, it's a concept of just sheep. You know how if one person says it, then the other person says it, then the other person says it. It's I have people sometimes today saying to me, no, like, he was a Muslim, he was inspired by Muslims. So, okay, you can think that. I don't need to waste my time, my breath changing that. So I learned about the stories. I did the Waigovu course, which gave the full history at the time, and I was watching more videos, really understanding about what the concept of Khalsa. Because at this point, I loved Khalsa. I loved how there was this concept of vigilantes that are fighting crime, they're saving people, from kingdoms who are claiming they're doing the righteousness, but really they're the oppressive state. Khalsa saving women, they're feeding the hungry. So it was kind of like this vigilantism, and it was like, growing up, I love comic book movies, and like I love Batman, vigilantes, and I love video games like Assassin's Creed, and I like how the cults has checkpoints, places of worship where it's a safe house if someone sees Nishan Sahib. So I really loved that, and I really wanted to receive Amrit. Something was like, it was this feeling that it was this greatness. And it was really immense, and I really wanted to receive Amrit if I was blessed with it, and I was growing my case. I love the warrior aspects of the faith. So the Sikhi factor was, I really wanted to research inside and out. At the same time, comparing it to Islam, growing up, I would watch a lot of Dr. Zakir Naik videos. My family would watch them, but there's other preachers I used to watch, Speaker's Corner, Muhammad Hijab, Ali Darabad. Most common ones, I would watch Jagwad Singh versus Muhammad Hijab videos, different, just having different views, having an open mind. It wasn't like, okay, I want to find things that are bad about Islam. There are lovely things in all faiths. My family are still Muslims. My mum's a Muslim. I don't hate them. I love them, as Sikhi teaches us. But yeah, I was reading books, and I got to a point where, so growing up, like, my family told me Islam's like a ocean. As you go in, it goes deeper and deeper. And I'm not saying this in a rude way, but where I was at the end of my journey, I felt like that ocean of Islam was more like a pond, and Sikhi was the ocean. Sikhi was just vast. It was greater, what it does. And how I interpreted it was, we should all aspire to be the perfect version of a human being. And what I mean by that is when I look at a Amritdhari Sikh, how a general Amritdhari Sikh is someone who battles their 5 demons: lust, ego, pride, greed, anger. Someone who objects to worldly opinion, he doesn't care about public what society's view is. Someone puts his faith at a forefront and really focuses on cleansing his mind and spirituality and praying to the one creator. Someone who, in the physical sense, isn't just hiding in a mountain as a saint. Someone who's fighting the oppression, fighting crime. I think that, to me, that was just, whoa, that's a perfect human being. So that's something that I looked up to and I wanted to be in. And Sikhi for me that was just what I chose at that point.
That's beautiful.
One question I had, because a lot of people, I feel like a lot of Muslims struggle to understand the concept of God in Sikhi and the concept that Vaheguru could be, Guru Nanak Dev Ji is Vaheguru as well as existing, and how is God in creation and outside of creation at the same time. They get confused. So how did you overcome that?
I found that quite interesting, and because I was actually going into it the other day, just researching more about it, because we're not the first community that actually talks about Vaheguru being in all creation. There's other communities, I think even Quakers, for example, which was a certain community. There's different cultures that talk about it as well. It's not something that's a very new thing that we've only spoken about it, but Sikh is a faith that really embraces that factor. Again, when I was watching those videos where other people, there'll be Islam versus Sikhi debates, and you would get Muslims asking, is Allah in, they would ask a really silly one, is Allah in the toilet or something like that? And I didn't interpret it like that. To me, it was, when I fully understood that concept, I broke it down, because you know how sometimes scientists say, for example, that we all came from the universe, as in particles that you see in space, that
stardust.
Yeah, exactly, that dust. So to me, it was the way they're asking that question, is Allah in that thing, is Allah in you, is Allah in you? Okay, but break all those things down. What is, if you break them all down to a molecular level, everything is
atoms.
So now let's change the question. Is Vaheguru, or Allah, or whatever you want to call the creator, is he in every atom? And I thought that was a very interesting way of just asking that question. Now it sounds like, whoa, because if you say no, that means you're putting a limit on him. So that's just one way I interpreted that. He's everywhere, and it blows your mind when you think about that. I can understand to new people, it's because the way our mind is, it wants to add logic to something, has to sort of think in a certain way. How we might have questions, but where did he come from? When was his start? Our mind wants to know, but there's certain questions your mind just can't comprehend the answer. Adam and Eve was the start. Okay, if Adam and Eve were the first humans, but what was before that? What was before that point? What was before that point? So
the thing is, you can never approach this concept of spirituality and God with a objective, logical mindset, because that's only going to take you so far. And God and Vaheguru is beyond logic, beyond objectivity and trying to prove on a scientific level. But I think the amazing thing with you is you actually experienced, because that's what we believe. Sikhi is all about experiencing Vaheguru, right? And so just take us back to that day. So you did Japji Sahib and you experienced in your Dasan Dua this spiritual thing.
Yes. So from that point, that feeling. I knew I wanted to be a Sikh, and I think one of the last things it was just understanding was the concept of reincarnation. So with that was growing up as a Muslim. I remember asking my mum, and generally after, why is it that we're in X situation but other people around the world are poor or they got missiles blown up at them? Why is it, so for example, a child's born with cancer and has to spend 15 years in a hospital with leukemia, but other children are okay? Different scenarios. And the answer always I found, no matter who you ask, they'll say it's Allah's testing you. And I wasn't happy with the answer, because yes, we accept everything as hukam, but we also say that Allah doesn't discriminate. So how is it that it's being chosen? What is
the defining factor for God?
I felt that it was a half answer. So when Sikhi talks about this concept of reincarnation and past deeds, previous lives,
karma,
it took me time to really understand it, because it's coming from an Islamic background where you do not believe in that at all. So that was a aspect that I took time researching. I learned it, and it made sense to me then. It's like, for example, with my stutter, for example, my whole life I've hated my stutter. I see it as a curse. But why do I have a stutter? And for example, not yourself, or not the person on the street. The concept of how Sikhi talks about it is that generally you pay the price of previous deeds. And to me, so now when I've come into Sikhi in this human form, even though there's times where I see my stutter as an obstacle, I see it as a blessing, because Maharaj, if I didn't have the stutter, I could have been a completely different person. It's all a process where I was probably meant to be on the path of Sikhi in this, or being shown it, and then it's up to me to take it in this life I'm in now. But that's something I have to pay a consequence of having a stutter. So I see it as a blessing, because just to quickly add, when we learn about Guru Arjan's Shaheed, and when they tried torturing him, but he says your actions are so sweet to Guru. There's times where I'll say to him myself, you're giving me this stutter which I hate, because it's one of the obstacles generally. I can't do Sikhi Pavitar as great as you guys, but I try. I have to work. I have to work my way around. But I say to Allah that your actions are still so sweet to me, because you've given me this path of Sikhi. Did you want to quickly talk about the first part of your question about how other people? You were mentioning people who aren't born in the faith. Sorry, are born in the faith. Yeah, who are, and they want to.
So did you feel like you gave Islam a fair chance?
I did, because I lived it. I came into Sikhi on that journey at the age of 24. So I experienced Islam. I really spent that year studying both, because and I think you wanted me to address on, if you're someone who's thinking about changing faiths, if you're someone who's an adult thinking about changing faiths, you got to understand how it's going to affect you as well, spiritually and physically. You really got to be committed to it. You got to research into it. Really know that that's the choice you want to make. The thing is, now we're getting it a lot with school kids, which upsets me, because it's you haven't experienced Sikhi. Because I used to be a kid, and as we all were, and then at that time you think you know it all, but in reality you don't. As your age of thinking changes. The one thing I could say is that especially if there's any youngsters watching, you owe it to yourselves. You owe it to yourselves to really know your religion. There's no excuse now. Maybe 100 years ago, during the age of the British Raj, when Sikhi Punjab was at a low, we were going through so many things. No talk about Sikhi. Now there's no excuse. The age of technology, everything's on your phone. If you're someone that's unsure about your faith, start from somewhere. Read a book, watch a video, something that... See, with me, it started with love, and I think religion needs to start from love. So if you're someone that hasn't, if you're from a Sikh family and you haven't you're not really having a strong will, then do it of das, keep trying. Your identity is you. I'll say it this way. In life, as humans, we go through so many things, and we're taught not to be close to worldly attachments. One day I might lose my mom, grandparent, I might lose my job. No matter what you lose in life, you should be able to tell yourself, you know what, at least I got my faith. So that's something I tell myself if I ever have highs and lows in life. So, and I think it's, with what's been happening now, it's a wake-up call to parents in general. I won't lie, I have met quite a few people over the past few years who tell me in conversation that they are Sikh, but they come from it was never practicing, you can tell. It was either one parent was Hindu, one parent was Sikh, so they don't know. But there's no excuse. You have to, it's hard, but you got to either learn it yourself, or if you're a parent, it's your duty as a parent to teach your kid your faith. It starts from somewhere.
This is the thing, because a lot of the cases we've seen recently, the family, there's a vulnerable situation of the kid. He's in a vulnerable situation, or her, and then the parents don't really know anything about Sikhi.
Yeah.
And then when the kid gets into peer pressure at school from other faiths to convert, and they these people prey on that vulnerability that they're going through at that point, and they convert them. Then the parents in the house realizes what's happened.
Yeah.
And we should have known something about Sikhi. And then they take the kids to the Gurdwara and they're like, can you talk to our kid who's converting? But it's too late at that point.
The thing is, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's literally, at that age when they're in school, when their emotions are everywhere and they want a calling to something, it's difficult to give advice because I come from I wasn't brought up in a Sikh family. I don't know how it is growing up Sikh. The one common thing that's been highlighted in the recent cases, they made a group chat, hearing other people's experiences was there's not been a unity in the Sikh community, and growing up with the youth, there's not been much socializing, that type of culture, there was, but it was broken. Either committee members stopped youth clubs or something, and it's something you see in other faiths where their communities are really strong, but in Punjabi Sikh households it was sadly dying.
Is there strong 2000s? in your youth in those years? Did you find there's a strong community in the Islamic groups and stuff?
Definitely, because you can see how strong it is now. They stick by each other, they help each other out, and that's something that it's not a negative. All communities should be like that, strong. But sadly, the Sikh community, it's
100%.
You don't have to add this in if you don't want to. But did you learn the whole Quran off by heart? Were you a Hafiz? Is it Hafiz?
Hafiz? Yeah. I didn't. I remember I started classes, but I didn't. I did go to masjid. I did go to masjid, but I didn't go young. My mum didn't send me at first because one of the reasons why, she was afraid of radicalism going on in masjids. So that's one thing I would say. But I started going after. I did start classes for Hafiz, but you need to be committed to it. It takes time and commitment.
Just there's a lot of things that we've spoken about, so it would be good if we could just, because I got a lot of questions in my head, and these are important points. The first thing, just touch on what you said about parents, and that is an important thing, because if parents are watching this, and I'm sure a lot of parents will be watching this, especially Sikh parents, a lot of the times, and it's not us judging anyone else, a lot of times parents do not follow Sikhi, and the worst thing that we've seen recently is where, like Kadavir Singh said, that parents are now scared for their kids. That, because any faith, even if you're a Muslim parent and your kids come home saying that I want to convert, if you're a Sikh parent, your kids come say I want to convert to Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, that parent's going to feel so, scared and sad. And
I imagine my mum went through that.
Right?
With me, so...
Exactly. So, but... and what I'm trying to say here when it comes to the Sikh parents is that means that you have to make a step. You have to take responsibility, learn about Sikhi yourself. You can't force it on the kids, because that's happened a few times where the parents then, and we're happy to help anyone, but it's almost too late when somebody has now committed to another faith because we haven't given them the opportunity to learn about Sikhi, and we've never made an effort ourselves as parents to learn about Sikhi. We can't just send our kids to Punjabi school, because we all know that Punjabi schools, in most cases, are not effective in teaching Sikhi. So we have to take the opportunity now to learn about Sikhi.
You need to inspire your kids as well by living Sikhi, right?
Yeah, how can they follow something that we're not following ourselves, right? So we have to take that step. It's really important. And just coming back to some of the points that we mentioned earlier, you talked about, again, comparing the two, and Gandhi made an important point earlier about logic.
Yeah.
Do you feel like when it comes to Islam, there was a lot of this idea of logic and miracles and science, and that if these boxes were ticked, then,
evidence.
It's evidence. And with Sikhi, we're not about that. Like when somebody comes to me and says to me, but in our scriptures it says this, and about science, and it's proved, I'm like, I don't care. Like that's the most minorest point to me. That means nothing to me.
Just to add to that, because there's something I forgot to mention as well. It's interesting you brought that up, because the main thing that I came into Sikhi was, and I think the main reason everyone comes into a faith is we want that salvation, however we interpret that is, and salvation basically of our soul, because we all know when life's temporary, we're gonna go. So what is it that we're yearning for after? Besides all the small points of that I didn't agree with Islam, the main reason I came into Sikhi was the way we talk about liberation, Sachkhand, peace of the mind, peace of the soul, and how after it's a very challenging path, but if you're able to do it, Maharaj by your soul, the concept of in Sikhi of us having the light of Vaheguru inside us, and it merges back to the ultimate Vaheguru. I fell in love with that, and I compared that, for example, because Abrahamic faiths don't believe that. They don't have that concept where you can merge back with Allah. It's separate. You have the highest you can achieve is being in the court of Allah. That's his blessing. But the way they describe it, rivers of honey, milk,
wine.
You can have non-alcoholic wine, foods, and if you have a husband and you're married, but you can still have X amount of hurriya, which is the entities for pleasure. To me, it just sounds like, how in the last year the most controversial person was Andrew Tate. All you have to do is be someone who's an Andrew Tate, like someone really wealthy, someone with multiple partners. You can have X amount of foods. To me, it was just like, you thinking back on it now, that's just, you can experience that on this world. It's not really a liberation. It sounds like, it comes across as someone man-made has made this. And I get their argument to say it's because we're humans, it's got to be enticing to us to want to achieve that heaven. But to me, it's like, no, like if you ask me, what is the best thing you could ever want in life? Like for someone to say, I want to merging with Vaheguru, to me, that's like the best feeling, But to them, they don't agree with that concept, so...
sorry, bro, just to clarify as well. So when you're saying like Allah, Vaheguru, you're using it interchangeably?
I use it interchangeably. One, I do that because to me, it's the same. I hate it when communities fight over each other and they say Allah's this and they say Christians say Father. To me, it's very simple, Before there was, there's been tribes of man throughout history, even on different planets. How they talk about aliens, but really it's just tribes of other communities. The only constant throughout the ages is Allah. I say Allah because, I'll tell you why, because I stutter, I found it really hard to say Vaheguru I stutter on G, so I say Allah because it's a bit more easier. But at the same time, we believe it's the same, it's the one. And as I was saying before, he's the only constant throughout the ages of mankind. So every different community would call him by a different name. It's not, oh, there's only 99 names of God and that's it. I remember when my wife told her family, and then she was backlash with her uncle and on the phone, and sometimes they come out with really silly points. No, he's Allah, because we would say no, we believe in Allah too, but that triggers them because it's like they think they've trademarked Allah, which is funny. But then they'll say no, they don't agree with what we call Allah. So that's a strange one.
That's a good point. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for any viewers who are confused. Like it comes in Gurbani as well. There's a shabad, koi bole Ram, koi Khuda, koi Seve, koi Sayya, koi Allah hai.
Same thing, right? They call different names, but they're the one.
Yeah. We say it because it's got I know the 4 sounds. They represent the 4 jugs, the 4 eras, and it means wonderful creator as well. Yeah.
So just coming back to that point, you were talking there about salvation and mukti, and thank you. You even touched upon how logically that even makes sense to you and the experience of becoming one with Vaiguruji. And that was my next question, which is it's a one question, but it's quite broad, and that is of fear, because you said you came to Sikhi because of love, right? Which is beautiful. But I feel a lot of times, one thing that other faiths will use, and in this case, if we're talking about Islam, they use fear a lot. Right, and they'll say, and we've seen this with cases like, people will say to us, the reason why I converted is because I was afraid that I was going to go to hell, eternal hellfire, and it's like, so you change your faith out of fear.
They came into Islam.
They came to Islam
because they thought they would go to hell if they
didn't follow Islam, right? Because you said earlier about accepting
the kafirs and
the truth, the message of Muhammad. That if you did not accept that, then you'll go to hell.
Yeah.
What is that concept specifically? What do they actually believe? Because in my head, that didn't make any sense. Because I remember we had one case. We were speaking to a young Sikh who had converted to Islam.
Yeah.
And he said that, look, he had no, what he's like, there's no probability. No. He said at that time that he wasn't, if he was to die today, then he didn't want to go to hell. So he accepted Islam because he didn't want to go to hell. Okay. And I said to him, so what about your parents that are sick and your brother? He goes, they're going to go to hell. And he goes, you got no problem with it? I go, you got no problem with that? He goes, no. And in my head, it just sounded, I was like...
But you came into the faith out of fear, not love.
Yeah. So my point here to you is the whole idea of fear is that... Can you expound on that? Like, I feel that's a big point that they use against Sikhs. But even in the faith of Islam, is that a big tool they use in general? Like,
you actually just reminded me of, I'll bring it up now. So when I was a child, I remember, so in my house, we had tenants staying with us. We had, there were other Muslims, an Indian family. And at school, I had a Sikh friend. And one of my Muslims friends said to him was, so you're a kafir, you'll end up in hellfire. So when I was conversating with one of the tenants who's a grown up, I remember saying to him, when he was talking about what happened in school for me, I was saying to him that, I was a bit upset about my Sikh friend, because my Muslim friend said that, you're a kafir, you're gonna end up in hellfire. Now, to me, an appropriate grown-up response would be, that's really bad. They shouldn't be looking down upon non-Muslims in that way. Children are children. They should see it. At that age, you should just be seeing everyone in a lovely way, But his reply was, straight up was, but we believe the Kafirs will be in the hellfire. Like, there was just no humanity. Like, I get that's the blunt answer, but it's just from that I remember, I think I was like 10 years old then. It was just from that answer. It was like, okay, it just goes back to, what kafir means, second class citizens. Okay, they're just second class, leave them. Yeah, they're gonna go hellfire. We don't see them as human beings.
it doesn't seem very compassionate to me. That was what I just saw because when we were speaking to the young kid, and to me it just didn't make sense. Like, you're saying to me that if I was a good person my whole life, and I'm sure we'll probably get comments on this as well, like saying no, it's this and that. But if you're telling me my whole life I followed Sikhi, and I was a Christian, for example, and I fed the poor, I looked after everybody, I was a good person, and I prayed to my creator, whatever name I had for them, I follow those principles. Just because I don't accept your truth, that I'm going to go to hell forever. Mm-hmm. So let's just say I made mistakes for the last, according to what Islam teaches, I didn't follow your truth, and I carried on like this for 80 years, right? And I died after 80 years. You're telling me because of 80 years of not accepting your truth and lies, that I'm going to go to hell forever? Yeah, it just didn't make sense to me. Like, what? Yeah. Even if somebody was the worst of the worst and they committed so many crimes for 80 years, you're telling me that God is going to punish you for billions upon, well, no, it's not even billions, it's eternity and infinity in the hellfire. It just didn't make sense to me because I don't understand God to be that. How can God be that?
One thing that all faiths say, just to literally add to your point, is He loves you. Christians say the Father loves you. Muslims, like, we all have this concept that Allah loves you, as His creation. So it's like, okay, you're going to be in hellfire. Well, hang on, where's that love then? It's like when they say Allah is forgiving. So
if Allah is the most merciful.
Merciful, yeah, exactly.
Then most it's like any parent, they would never punish their kid forever. They've done something wrong.
It's very binary. You're not a Muslim, hellfire. You are a Muslim.
Yeah. And I know there's more to the concept. Like, they say that when you die, you'll get given tested.
You get questioned.
Yeah, questioned.
There are similarities.
And if you pass that, then you're thingy. But again, it didn't make sense to me because, again, me, as a Sikh, and, Guru Kirpa, until my last breath, I'll be a Sikh.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to, change that. Yeah. So that means that any good that I've done in my life, it counts as zero and I'm going to hell forever. It just doesn't make sense. And as Sikh, we're not here to say that if you're Muslim, mate, you're going to hell. If you're a Christian, you're going to hell. We appreciate there's truths in other faiths. Yeah. And if you can follow that truth, then, you can meet the one as well, right? Yeah. We're not here to say that only Sikhs get liberation. We've seen it in the past. Other faiths have got liberation as well. Exactly. But of course, as a Sikh, we appreciate, and the reason why we are Sikh is that the easiest way to get liberation in this dark age of Kaljug is through Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Yeah. Sabte Vadda Sat Guru Nanak Jinn Kal Rakhi Meri. That there's no one as great as Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj. But today you got people and kids that have been brainwashed into saying that Guru Nanak Dev Ji is a shaitan. Yeah. They're calling shaitan, referring to like a devil. Yeah. Right? Like, how can somebody follow a different faith and call their previous faiths like guru or prophet a devil? Like, even if somebody came into the Sikh faith.
ਤੇ ਐਸੀ ਜੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਸਿੱਖ ਬਣ ਗਿਆ, ਸਿੱਖੀ ਵੱਲ ਚਲਾ ਗਿਆ। ਹਰ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਬ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਝ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੌਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਰਸਤਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਡਿਸੀਜਨ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਰਸਤੇ 'ਚ ਚੱਲਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਜ਼ਬਰਦਸਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਹੈ, ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹ ਨੌਨ ਮੁਸਲਿਮ ਹੈ। ਇਸਲਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਵੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਬਰਦਸਤੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਵੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਿਆ ਸਕਦੇ, ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਬਰਦਸਤੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਵੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਿਆ ਸਕਦੇ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਮੁਰਾਦ ਇਹ ਵੇ ਕਿ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਡਿਸੀਜਨ ਲਵੇ ਰਾਈਟ ਕੀ ਹੈ, ਰੋਂਗ ਕੀ ਹੈ। ਅਗਰ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਮਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਬਣ ਗਿਆ। ਕੁਝ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਐਸੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਦਾ ਦਿਮਾਗ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸੈਪਟ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਪਾਉਂਦਾ। ਇੱਕ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਐਕਸੈਪਟ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਪਾਉਂਦਾ। ਉਸ ਦੇ ਜ਼ਿਹਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਈ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ, ਕਈ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਵਾਲਾਤ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਇਨਸਾਨ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਨ ਦਾ, ਆਪਣਾ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਚੁਣਨ ਦਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਇਖਤਿਆਰ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦੀ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਰਸਤੇ ਨੇ ਚੱਲਣਾ, ਕਿਹੜੇ ਰਸਤੇ ਨੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਣਾ, ਇਹ ਉਹਦਾ ਡਿਸੀਜਨ ਹੈ। ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਰਸਤੇ ਤੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਠੀਕ ਲੱਗਾ ਹੈ, ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਰਸਤੇ ਤੇ ਲੱਗਾ ਹੈ। ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਬੁਰਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ। ਹਰ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਅੱਛਾਈ ਵੀ ਹੈ, ਬੁਰਾਈ ਵੀ ਹੈ। ਹਰ ਮਜ਼ਹਬ ਦੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਅੱਛਾਈਆਂ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਬੁਰਾਈਆਂ ਵੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਅਗਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਚੀਜ਼ ਚੰਗੀ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਚੁਣਨ ਦਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਹੱਕ ਹੈ। ਅਗਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਲਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਰੋਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਲਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੱਲ ਲਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ। ਇਨਸਾਨ ਹਰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਛਾ ਬੁਰਾ ਸਮਝ ਕੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹਨੇ ਇਸਲਾਮ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਨੂੰ ਅਪਣਾਇਆ। ਤੇ ਇਹ ਸੀ ਜੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਵੀਡੀਓ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜੇ। ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ।